So we do a lot of discussion of wanting and identifying wants. And this topic, I feel like, can be complicated. We've only just briefly discussed it, and there's many ways it could go. And I even feel a little bit of fear of even trying to wade into this water. But I've noticed the idea that it can be scary, probably now more than ever, to consider wanting to reproduce with all the divorce and seeing what happens, and the women that put their career on hold, and then the guy decides he doesn't want her anymore, and then she's just left high and dry and in a worse position than if she never paused her life to have kids. There can be so many reasons to fear that, and plenty of people still absolutely want to, and there's probably some people who maybe just don't have that urge. But I'm wondering, how does one know if the lack of urge is truly like they don't have within them the desire, or if it is society and fears that have kind of buried that so much that they're just not in touch with it?
That's a great question. And sure, it could be taken in a broader context of how do you know whether you want or don't want anything, or whether it's just what you've been conditioned to expect or think. So let's play with it for a little bit. I don't have an absolute answer. It's a really complex question. It's a good question. For a while, I'll just say that for a while, when people would ask me, what do you think? Should I have kids? My answer was, if you really, really want to, yes. If you're anything other than a super enthusiastic yes, don't. It's really hard. It's expensive. Things you mentioned, you're going to put, one of you at least is probably going to put your career on hold, or your kid's going to be in constant daycare, which is like, why are you having somebody else raise this person that you're responsible for? So I've got some pretty strong opinions about at least one of the parents taking a lot of time to be with the kid. It's what I did. And yes, it slowed my career down tons. And having kids is one of the most phenomenal things I've done. So, like, do you really, really want to? For a long time in my life, I didn't. And then you call it the biological clock or whatever, right around 30, I was like, I'm having kids now. So who knows? Like this flow of, do you want something? Do you not want something? Do you want it for yourself? Do you want it to try to please somebody? Do you not want it to try to please somebody, or because of culture? I'd say it's really great to go to simple and like try to get your mind out of this giant, big, huge question of, oh my gosh, it's going to determine my destiny, and come into your own body in the moment. And you've got all your cuddle party stuff up there on your screen. It's one of the reasons I love cuddle parties and I love one-on-one cuddle sessions. Can you be in your own body right now, noticing what you want? Do you want to come closer? Do you want to move further away? What does that wanting feel like? And we start to come into our own awareness of our own desires. What does it feel like when I want to do something and I do it? What does it feel like when I want to do something and I don't? What does it feel like when I don't want to do something and I do it? What does it feel like when I don't want to do something and I don't? And we get that in this very moment by moment experience in our bodies. And we get to start to sync up our minds and our bodies and our voices, which I think is what people need to make these bigger decisions. Do I want to marry you? Don't I want to marry you? Do I want to have kids? Do I not want to have kids? Do I want to move to cross the country with you or not? Right? Like, those are big questions, and we can really get in our heads, and other people can have a lot of opinions. So that's my take. What do you think?
Well, one analogy I recently made was, let's just assume polar bears don't want to eat us, but we're really not used to them being around. And if someone says, hey, do you want to go ride a polar bear? Well, how do I know if I want to? Like, even if they're kind of friendly, I haven't seen one up close. I haven't touched one. I haven't made friends with one. There's so many unknowns. Whereas if someone has grew up in Antarctica, then they might have a better take on that. And something I've observed is, I had a friend that in college knew that she was not only looking forward to having babies, she was looking forward to being pregnant, which I thought was the thing that you tolerate to get the baby. And I also think of it kind of like, okay, so I've known the people who just naturally want to, they just magically, biologically want to. Then there's people like the friend who have had tons of experiences with kids, and that's what told them that they wanted to. But then I look at how I view happiness archaeology, where in laughter yoga, we learn kids laugh like 300 to 700 times a day. Adults laugh like 7 to 12 times a day, something like that. So that tells me that we have happiness within us. It just kind of gets buried. It's not only the lucky people who float through life smiling all the time, who just happen to be lucky enough to be happy. So I guess when I apply that concept here, maybe the tracking back of how do we know if we would want it if we had experiences with kids? Does the universe not want us to? Because if it did want us to, we would have had the experiences with kids, which would have ignited that desire, which would have made us already do it or something. And then if we don't, like you said, if we don't want to get into a people pleasing mode, but we want to explore, could I truly authentically for myself want this, not to please someone? How to even dig that back up and find out?
Well, here's a funny thing you could do. You could pretend to have a child with that person. They used to do the egg experiment with high schoolers, or you could take a stuffed animal out or something and be like, great, we need to feed the stuffed animal every 4 hours. We need to get woken up spontaneously at different times of the night when they cry. We need to make sure they're cared for during the day. Can't leave it alone. Do we give it to a friend? Do we, like, there's so many logistics and things. And that's going to be a ridiculous comparison because obviously the stuffed animal or the egg is not going to awaken those hormonal responses. It's not going to love you back. It's not going to do whatever the magical things are that kids do that keep us from killing them or just abandoning them on the sidewalk. It's not just that it's illegal. Most of us would be like, oh, horrified. How could you even expect that? But like, here's this creature who is completely dependent and completely needy. They're not doing the dishes. They're not doing their share of their work. They're not paying their share of their rent. Like, they're not doing any of the things that we think of as fair. None of them. Completely unfair relationship. And yet most of them achieve adulthood. Very rarely does any parent actually kill off their kids. I'm trying to say this like kind of funny, and sorry if it's hitting anybody's nerve, because obviously that's not a funny topic at all. But somehow, biologically, hormonally, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, whatever the things are, they come together and they gel so that more people than not are happy they had kids.
And what
So
do you
it's really hard to anticipate ahead of time.
and that's a big commitment. Like with cuddle party, if you try someone's hand on your shoulder and you don't like it, 5 seconds later you can say, I'm done. It's
Yep.
different with a whole human.
It is very different with a whole human. You cannot give them back.
And what do you think about if someone recognizes that society, training, whatever has caused them to convince themselves out of it? What do you think about kind of trying on the opposite of like convincing themselves into it just to see if it sticks, not,
Sure. Just don't make any actual decisions about becoming a parent while in that state. But if
I
you want to do it as a mental exercise to counteract what you think you've gotten from society and culture, sure. I'm always a fan of thought experiments and role plays and things like that. So
I think that egg experiment or anything like it, to me, makes sense to see how the person you would consider doing that with, how you will work together as a team. But yeah, the question of will this really replicate? I feel like maybe that's why some people get pets first to see how they actually
try
like.
the closest thing, right? Get a dog or a horse or something that really needs a lot of attention. Not a cat. Cats are way too independent. They'll fake you out. You'll be like, sure, we can get together. And then be like, what happened? This thing is so needy.
If you were to chisel in stone your wisdom on what the best things you think are about having a kid and why the majority of society would want to consider it, what would you say are some of those reasons?
I think they're different. I would say for me, if we look at 6 human needs: certainty, uncertainty, significance, love and connection, growth, and contribution. Growth is my number one need. It's what I go for all the time. Love and connection is my second. So for me, being a parent is the like really direct, really intense way to both grow and have love and connection. There is no other human being on the planet that I'm going to have the degree of love and connection with that I have with my children. Of course, I can have other wonderful relationships, but nobody else was created in my body, brought forward from me, nursed at my breast. Like, it's just, it's not going to be that level of, I 100% have committed to you and I know we're connected no matter what. So for me, and they call on me to grow all the time. Better than any therapy, personal growth workshop, anything. Like, I live with my personal growth workshops, and it's amazing and confronting. So I'd also say, if that speaks to anybody, growth, loving connection, contribution, kids are it. You know, if you want more like certainty that your life is going to be stable and you're going to avoid pain and have pleasure, or uncertainty that you can go do lots of fun vacations, or significance that you're the most important one, kids are not such a good strategy.
I think also
For
one,
society, I don't know. Sorry, the second half of your question was like, what lets people know? I have no idea. I don't even think most people choose to become parents, really. I think it just, we like having sex, and if you're not super careful, eventually you have kids.
I thought that too. That I bet you in the world, maybe the majority happen that way. Even within marriages, I would imagine there's plenty that
Yeah.
are outside of planning. And then I guess for the idea that in today's society where there's just so much divorce, and it seems like it's scary to even be able to trust your partner enough to stick with you through getting the kids to adulthood, like, do you think, especially as a female, that one needs to be sure enough that even if, like, to almost plan on, if I have to do this on my own, I still want to do this, and to be that sure?
Yes, and that can backfire, right? That can kind of sabotage that you're not opening and trusting your partner, which creates then the relationship that falls apart. So, but yes, I was that confident when I got pregnant with my first daughter. I was like, and you could want me to be pregnant or not. This is my baby, and I'm having her. So I was very solid at that point, where I hadn't been previously in my life. So trust yourselves, women, and guys, have real conversations. But I mentioned those 6 human needs. One of the things you can also do to help figure out where you are with this person, because there are all sorts of life choices you're going to make. Do you have the baby at home or at a hospital or in a birthing center? Do you have a doula or a midwife or an obstetrician? Do you breastfeed? Do you bottle feed? Do you do cloth diapers or no diapers or disposable diapers? Like, there's thousands and thousands of decisions about, what do you name them, about the future of a whole human being, that it's nice to know how you make decisions with the person you're doing it with. So there's some fun things you can do of just looking at like lists of values, or doing values exercises, having really introspective conversations, even just asking those things, like looking at what are the decisions you're going to have to make about your child. Do you shop at thrift stores? Do you get brand new clothes? Like, people might think these are ridiculous questions, but they're not really. I did a home birth, and I did thrift store clothes and hand-me-downs. I breastfed. My kids were not expensive. Some people go, they have hospital births that become emergency C-sections, and they do this other route that is like thousands and thousands, tens of thousands of dollars a year to have a child, right? Where's that money coming from? So really have the conversations and talk about the things that aren't sexy and cute and, oh my gosh, I want to love something cute and smushy.
And then it becomes, oh my gosh, so like, how, I don't know, part of me thinks one ought to figure this out before they're even potentially partnered. And then, well, how well do you know someone? It's got to be a little bit fun before you get into the deep, deep stuff, but
Right.
all of this matters.
So some of us like having conversations about values and think it's fun. So, you can try that on as an early stage relationship thing. Like, hey, let's get to know each other. Especially because so many of us are scared of wasting time. We've gone on too many first, second, and third dates that didn't go anywhere. Dated somebody for a month or 2 or 3 or 3 years. It's like, wouldn't you like to save that time? So how about have some values aligning conversations ahead of time?
I recently been thinking there's a book that said that the artificial intelligence did a better job than the judges at predicting which criminals would reoffend. And I'm thinking, can we work this into like maybe some matchmaking? And if we go into it knowing there's like a 98% chance we should be compatible, maybe we'll be a little bit like more okay with the fact that they wear socks with sandals. Like maybe that's more acceptable.
Oh gosh, I think we should end there. I think socks with sandals should be the end.
Perfect. Dad mode activated. Thank you. Thank you.
Oh, that was fun.